Hello, track wrestling coordinators for each of the sectional tournaments coming up here. This is Brian Raper, and I am going to walk you through a couple of steps today on this little track wrestling video that specifically is going to cater to seeding sectional tournaments. And if this video goes well, then we're going to do some other things with some other tips and things like that to help you guys run your sectionals in a couple of weeks. Before we actually get into the seating procedure on track wrestling, I'm here on the AIA online website, and I have the 2016-2017 State Wrestling Tournament Guide, and I want to show this to you guys specifically so we can talk about seating criteria. If you don't know where to go, you go to AIAonline.org, you go to Coaches, Wrestling, and then you'll go to the State Wrestling Tournament Guide, and this pops up. If we scroll down to right here, this is page 10. Sectional and state seating criteria are as follows. And I want to mention a couple of things real quick here before we go to the track wrestling side of things. Sectional seating criteria. First order of business, wrestler must have a winning record to be seated. Make sure that you're not seating a kid that is 12 and 14. Must have a winning record. As far as the criteria, this is all published in the tournament guide. Returning previous Arizona state champion, not state placer, is the first point. Second one, a wrestler must have a minimum of 7 matches overall. It used to be that they would have 7 matches in weight, but now it's 7 matches overall to be seeded. Number 3, pre-seeding will be determined by each wrestler's overall season winning percentage. So essentially the system is going to organize kids originally by their win percentage. Results must be entered into track wrestling website for matches to be official. We're not going to accept anything after there is, let me say this, there's going to be a Wednesday before sectional tournament, Wednesday night at midnight that week. There will be a cutoff for coaches. They will not be able to go into track wrestling and edit any match results or anything pertaining to any matches after that Wednesday deadline. So if it's in track wrestling, that is the final say. And if it's an error, that's their fault. So that's what that is pertaining to. Track wrestling will also take into account all common opponents, and I'll explain what common opponents is as well and how that factors in. Most important, and this was a change based on what we did last year, head-to-head supersedes everything. If there is a head-to-head victory, even if the track wrestling website and track wrestling seeding does not take it into account, head-to-head will always win the argument. But there is a little caveat here. Must be in the top 8 seeding pool to challenge. That means that if a kid is seeded number 10, or if he's the 10th kid in that weight class, but he's beaten the number 2 seed, it doesn't matter. You must be in the 8-person seeding pool to challenge for head-to-head. So if you have questions about this, you can email me directly and we'll chat about this. So let's go now to a tournament. This is one of the tournaments from last year, and specifically this is Division III, Section 3 from last season. So we're going to work with some buttons that are on your tournament pages now, but they're not actively working because we don't have any actual wrestlers entered in any of these tournaments coming up yet. This is last year's tournament, so we're going to work with real data, but I'm not going to adjust anything. Very first thing I want to go to is and this is all about seating procedure here. So here's my home screen, and we go up to bracketing, and we go to seed build brackets. This is where we're basically going to run all of our bracket building operations from. I specifically want to bring up something last year in this sectional at the 126-pound weight class. And I'm going to slow it down a little bit here to talk about a couple of things about how this should function and why I picked this weight class as kind of a demo. First, if you've never seeded or run a tournament or been in charge of this with track wrestling, this is our horizontal plane that we seed wrestlers with. Now, first thing you'll notice is there are, in this weight class at 126 pounds, we have a total of 16 wrestlers. Okay, that's pretty typical. There might be 12, there might be 5. But right now in this one, there are 16 wrestlers. So, you'll also notice that some of these are grayed out, some of them are white. The reason why is because these wrestlers are seeded wrestlers, these wrestlers are not. Okay? Number 3, as we said earlier, there's supposed to be 8 wrestlers seeded, or 8 seedable wrestlers in each weight class. Right here, we only see 6 seeded. Why is that? That's because this kid's 0-0, this kid's 1-0, this kid's 6-9. He's under 500, under 500, under 500. So those wrestlers cannot be seeded. Under 500 does not have 7 matches, does not have 7 matches. So essentially we only have 6 wrestlers that we can seed in this 126-pound weight class, and that's fine. So here's what we need to do to seed a weight class. I am going to, you can use this button and it'll put a check mark next to all their names, or you can go individually. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take those 6 wrestlers that I know are seedable, and I'm going to put a little check mark next to each of their names. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 kids checked. Now, I've verified that they all have 500 or better records and that they all have 7 total matches for this season. Now, there are 2 buttons that you are going to work with a lot when seeding your tournaments. Up here, we have these 2 special buttons, Fetch AIA Criteria, and then we have this one, View AIA Seed Report, and these are very, very useful buttons. This is the order that I use them. So after I've gone through and I've checked all the kids that are seedable due to the criteria, what I do is I'm going to go up and I'm going to hit Fetch AIA Criteria. I'm not going to hit it right now because I don't want to screw up last year's seeds and last year's bracket. So I'm not going to hit it, but you would if this were a live tournament. What Fetch AIA Criteria does is the system is going to go back and it's going to check all of the standings and all of the different records and all of the different matches head-to-head and all that good stuff that has happened throughout the year. And it's going to essentially fetch the criteria and then sort those 6 wrestlers. So if I would hit that, most likely after I've check mark kids, it's going to move kids around. Great. So that's what Fetch AIA Criteria does. This is not a final check. I'm going to show you a better check here. So once I have fetched AIA Criteria, the next button I want to hit is this View AIA Seed Report button. This is extremely important because this is the justification that we will use when a seed is given. So if a coach has a question about why a seed was given, we go here to look it up. So we are going to play a little bit with this. So when I hit, and again, this seed report is only going to compare wrestlers who have checks next to their name. It's not going to compare these kids. It's just going to compare those 6. So when I hit View AIA Seed Report, this pops up. Now, the most important thing to see is that track wrestling seeds wrestlers according to these. These are called seed points. So in essence, every wrestler here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 kids, has the opportunity to be compared to the other 5 wrestlers here. Or if there were 8, 1 kid would be compared to the other 7. So in this instance, we've got this kid from Yuma being compared to the other 5 seedable wrestlers. And track wrestling has determined that this kid gains 5 seed points. Every time the system determines that you are better than another wrestler by criteria, you get a point. So this kid got 5 points, meaning he's better than the 1, 2, 3, 4 other 5 wrestlers. This kid did not get 5, he only got 4, probably because this kid got all 5, so he is going to, so 5 points and 4 points and 3, and it works down very, very nicely. Sometimes, and I'll show you a little screw up later that we might have, and things get a little confusing because the system can award 2 kids 3 points, or 3 kids 3 points, or something to that effect where there's a tie, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So, in this instance, Yuma, San Luis, Shadow Ridge, Wickenburg, Estrella Foothills, Maryvale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And as you see on our little horizontal plane, Yuma, San Luis, Shadow Ridge, Wickenburg, Estrella Foothills, Maryvale. So that's how the system went ahead and ordered it, and it's a pretty clean sweep. So let's go ahead and look and see what happens. This is the most useful part of this report. So what I want to do is I want to go from the very top to the very bottom. I'm going to click on Yuma. Now look, this is important because the very first, there's the state champion criteria. Is the kid a state champion? No, no. We see a whole bunch of kids that are not state champions. Okay. So then we go to the next one. So Yuma. Why did Yuma get a seed point over San Luis? If I go and I look for Yuma and San Luis. Yuma and San Luis. Yuma, neither kid is a state champion, so we go to the next criteria. Head-to-head. And again, these are already organized by win percentage. This says that Yuma has 4 head-to-head victories over San Luis. 4 head-to-head victories over San Luis. So 1 point was given to Yuma in seeding over San Luis because he has 4 head-to-head victories. Okay, so we know why Yuma is number 1 over San Luis. So let's go and look at San Luis now. San Luis. Why is San Luis over Shadow Ridge? So here we go. Shadow Ridge and San Luis. No, neither of them are state champions. Head-to-head, we don't see any value there. So that means that they did not wrestle each other head-to-head during the season. So what happens next is it goes down to the next piece of criteria that the system uses called common opponents. Essentially, common opponents means 3-3 and 5-1. That means a total of six matches. So that means Lopez and Montion, these two kids throughout the entire season have 6 total opponents that both of them wrestled, which means that this kid Lopez was 3-3 against those 6 kids. Montion was 5-1 against them. So the system awarded Montion the higher seed over Shadow Ridge because he was 5-1 against common opponents and therefore got a seed point. So San Luis over Shadow Ridge over Wickenburg. We can see Shadow Ridge has 2 victories. Shadow Ridge over Wickenburg. Shadow Ridge has 2 victories to Wickenburg's 1, so he got the seed point. You can go on and on and on and on and on and on. So that's how to use the seed report function. And you can click on any of these kids' names, and it will change the different values down on the bottom and compare them to every other wrestler in their seeding pool. When we go back and when we verify that this is correct, now we can actually seed and build the bracket for this weight class. Now there are a couple of things. We look up here, max seed jump. We always leave that at 8. Here's why. If the number 8 seed beat the number 1, hey, guess what? This 8 seed is eligible to jump up to number 1. That means it's a max seed jump of 8 spots. Some tournaments, they maximize it by only being able to jump up 2 or 3. Max seed is 8. So we allow an 8 seed to jump up to 1. That's why we do it that way. So we leave it there at 8. If you want to change it to 6 because there are only 6, fine. Not a big deal. Next one. We are essentially only seeding 6 wrestlers in this weight class. So instead of the seed all wrestlers, because we don't want to seed all of them, what I'm going to do is I'm going to seed through seed 6 because I'm only seeding 6. If I had 7 kids that could be seeded, I would seed through seed 7. If I've got 8 kids, I would seed through seed 8. A lot of times you're going to do seed through seed 8. In this case, we're going to seed through seed 6. I'm not going to push it because I don't want anything to change. From there, after I seed through seed 6, I would hit save seeds. What that's going to do is the system is going to lock in those 6 seeds. Or if you've got 8 kids, those 8 seeds, however many you tell the system to seed and then to save. After we have done that, what we do, knowing that the seeds are saved, all of these kids over here that are not grayed out and are not seeded, they're going to have whatever number next to their name, fine, after it says save seeds. But these kids get randomly drawn into the bracket, which means they don't get placed by a human, essentially. The system will randomly put them on a line. It doesn't matter where, just randomly drawn into the bracket. So when I go up, this on your tournaments would say build bracket. It would not say rebuild. I've already built these brackets, so that's why it says rebuild. So once I've gone through and I've saved my seeds through seed 6, I would hit build bracket. It would give me up here a little dialog box. I hit OK, cool. And these would stay gray. These are going to come in at just random numbers. This might say 8. This might say 11. This might say 13. It's just going to randomly pull kids into the bracket. Cool. I'm done. My bracket's built. Here's how I check it. I go up here to bracket. I view my bracket. In this case, obviously, this bracket's already done. It's been wrestled because it was last year's tournament. And your bracket would look exactly like this. And you would have the buys placed in random spots. And you would be off and running for that weight class. So, if you have any questions further as far as how to seed, and I know it went kind of fast, but that's a basic premise of how to use these 2 special buttons up here. So, go ahead. Log into your tournament, check it out. You're not going to be able to do anything with these because there's no value, there's no kids in your tournament yet. But when you start practicing, that's a quick, easy way to learn the procedure. If you have any questions, call or email me. Thanks.